Hey everybody, it's Anthony Brogdon on my Monday night show. Um, and the topic is, and we kind of, touched on it this last Monday, why learn Black history? But is February enough? And I think it made me think about this topic is because so often, here comes someone joining us, Damon Fordham.
All right, how's that?
That's better.
Okay.
Yeah, I do this every Monday from 7 to 8 o'clock, just to keep more content, and keep it going. Let's call it that. Keep talking this Black history because I talk about it all the time. So it only makes sense for me to do a live show. And this is probably the third or fourth one that I've done, and I'm so excited to have you on with me. I hope that there are other people that will join us, but I am taping this, so we will put it out there. And the topic today's show is why learn Black history? Is February enough? And the reason why I even thought of this, which is a little different than what we talked about last week, is because I'm kind of wondering, do people get tired of hearing Black history and they just wait to hear about it in February? Do the schools and the universities do they just pigeonhole Black history topics and conversation for February? Uh, do it is and then people also say, well, February, they complain about it being the shortest month
Oh,
and saying, oh man, that why they put us in February?
that's
So
ignorant.
yeah, so let me address that to you. Is why learn Black history? Is February enough? What do you think?
Okay, that was a means to an end. Okay, Doctor. For those of you who let me start off by saying that two of the worst places you can get your history is Hollywood and social media. Okay, and well, it's with social media. Sometimes you get the equivalent of those guys that used to run out their mouths off in the barbershop, not knowing what they're talking about half the time. But, it's a release for their emotions. Now, the truth about February is that Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who was the founder of Black History Month, he originally called it Negro History Week back in 1926. And he chose February as the birth months of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. Had nothing to do with the shortest and coldest month. But the tragedy of that is that, you see, since a lot of people don't read, what they know is what they see and what they hear around them and what they've been told all their lives. And because of a lot of the traumatic aspects of the Black experience, negativity is all that some people know. And so they figure that if we had a Black History Month, it had to come out as something negative. And so this is why you have that conspiracy theory culture in so many of our communities, and so many people who, and you know who they are, exploit the bitterness of our people via social media on that level by regurgitating that stuff. And which is why I commend what you do, because what you do is try to bring out the facts before people.
Let me stop you there. Let me stop you there and ask. Let's go back to the beginning of what you said. Who was Dr. Carter G. Woodson?
Oh, glad.
How was he the guy that came up with saying, I'm going to do this?
Well, the essence of him was this. He's an interesting person. He was born 10 years after slavery in Kentucky, 1875, okay? And he saw some of the early attempts of Black education in Kentucky and didn't want to spend the rest of his life working in the coal mine. So he gravitated toward education. And it just so happened that in that post-Reconstruction days, Berea College was, along with the University of South Carolina, were the only two white colleges during Reconstruction in the South that allowed Black people. So he went to Berea College in Kentucky before the Jim Crow laws stopped Black people from going there. And He went on to get his PhD from Harvard, one of the first Black people to do so in history. So he taught for a long time at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and he figured that with so much negative propaganda about Black people in those days, and of course this was having an effect on the people themselves, that he could make a dent in this by setting aside a period to celebrate the little known accomplishments of Black people. So this is where he got the idea of Negro History Week in 1926 to encourage schools to promote this through his organization, the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. So he was doing this up to his death in 1950, promoting true and honest Black history in a way that the average person could understand, which is a key thing in all of this, up to his death in 1950.
Now, didn't he have a newspaper or something like that he was
Yes.
leaflets or something that he was using to get the word out?
Yeah, he wrote the Journal of Negro History, which came out, I believe it started in 1916. And as a matter of fact, my father saw Dr. Woodson in 1943 at South Carolina State University, the HBCU here at Orangeburg, South Carolina. And he got a copy of his book, The Story of the Negro. And so my father kind of ingested that book. And so when I was a boy, he would tell me stories about Black history, largely that he got from that book. So he was basically doing missionary work, going around the country, promoting not only the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History and the Negro History Bulletin and Negro History Week, all of that, because what his job was to plant seeds among the youth of that time, and those seeds to develop into a people who truly knew who they were. Because as a wise man told me when I went to Africa a few years ago, Dr. Usman Sene at the West African Research Center in Dakar in Senegal, West Africa, he told me that a wise man plants a seed and knows he might not live to sit in the shade of the tree. And that's what Dr. Carter G. Woodson was doing.
Yeah. Well, when he did this, I wonder what the response was. Was it kind of the same apathetic response that we might see today? Or were Black people kind of thirsty for hearing what other Black people were doing? Because, one of the things that we talk about, and people call this the good old days, is that back in the day, especially when Black business was thriving in our neighborhoods, they would say Black people supported those businesses until they had the chance not to, and then they got into this desegregation and was able to go to the white man, so on and so forth. So I wondered, or I am wondering now, I wonder what the response was to him.
Well, it depends. Well, see, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, here's the thing about that. People love, before I answer that question, people love to deal with these things in absolutes, okay, to make it look like it was a across the board attitude toward these things, because people love simple answers to complicated questions.
That's right.
And real life is not always that simple, because essentially you had Black people who supported Dr. Carter G. Woodson. In fact, the great Marcus Garvey published a lot of Carter G. Woodson's articles in his Negro World newspaper. And while Marcus Garvey had his following among Black people, there were many of him who looked at him as a buffoon and a crook and a clown, as we know. So, it depends on who you were, because now with Carter G. Woodson, many people appreciated what he was trying to do. But then you had his detractors who thought he was arrogant, aloof, and self-righteous, and tended not to be the type of guy who palled around in a lot of social organizations and things like that. He was sort of a loner, right?
Oh, really? So, okay.
Oh, yeah. He never married or had children. And he often said that he was married to his work. So he was looked at some people as a sort of aloof, antisocial bookworm and all of that. But at the same time, though, he was putting in the work. He even went so far as to publish two in particular that I have here at the house. One was a book filled with African folk tales for young kids, which were the stories of the griot storytellers of West Africa. Now, I don't know, and he also wrote a book called African Heroes and Heroines. Now, I don't know if he ever actually went to Africa, but he certainly read a whole lot about Africa and put that to a lot of people at the same time that their only image of Africa was Tarzan. And I'm here to tell you that unfortunately that's still true today because, when I go to Africa and I come back, people ask me, well, how'd you get there? And I tell them I flew, and they have a hard time believing that there are airports in Africa.
Yeah,
They're
I know.
they're late to the program with this. So
yeah, I know.
Still have a lot of work to do in educating the people. But these guys like him and Marcus Garvey and all them, they are my heroes. I commend them because they put in the work by planting the seeds.
One of the things that I do, and I call it good Black history. I wonder with Carter G. Woodson, did he have how much good Black history did he have? I mean, was he able to find out what Booker T. Washington was doing, what his organizations had said? And this was what I would have done. And look at all these Black-owned businesses. Look how far we've come. I wonder what would be his angle to say, hey, let's talk about us in positive terms.
Well, he was all about that because, as a matter of fact, he was one of the few PhD scholars of that day who spoke well of what Booker T. Washington was trying to do. He was a contemporary of Booker T. Washington, as a matter of fact. And he understood that Booker T. Washington was trying to do a means to an end by laying a groundwork of a self-sufficient Black community that even if there was segregation, we'd still be able to do something to have for our own and make a living for ourselves and so forth. Carter G. Woodson understood that, as opposed to a lot of the intelligentsia that time who said, oh, he's trying to take us back to slavery and keep us on the farm and all that. No, I've been to Tuskegee. I used to take kids to field trips on Tuskegee. And I'm proud to count Dr. Sarah Washington O'Neill Rush, who is Booker T's great-granddaughter. I'm very proud to call her a close personal friend of mine. And I've read Booker T. Washington's writings beyond Up from Slavery and so forth. And I understood that that was what he was about. But you see, again, most people know what they are told. And the narrative of what they were told was, oh, he was an Uncle Tom. He wanted to keep us in slavery. And when I challenged them on that, usually they're not able to back it up because all they could tell me is what they were told. They haven't done the research.
Yeah, that's so true. And I again, my question, and I'm using you as the expert here because you are. Would he been able to talk? What did he celebrate for Black History Month? That's what I'm asking. Do you have an idea? Did Black History Month grow into programs like it is today?
Oh yes.
That kind of thing even back then. And go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, I've talked to a number of elders from that period who told me that Negro History Week was a very big deal in a lot of Black schools in those days. And they had a lot of special publications for that, not just through Carter G. Woodson, but a lot of other people got on the bandwagon with that, including, even though Du Bois had a somewhat contentious relationship with Carter G. Woodson, he was one of the main ones who said that Woodson was this aloof, antisocial guy, which many people said the same thing about Du Bois. But Du Bois welcomed a lot of what Carter G. Woodson was trying to do for the greater good of the people, and he would often help supply materials for Negro History Week. And I should clarify something here. Negro History Week did not become Black History Month until 1976. Back when Gerald Ford was president, it was expanded to Black History Month as opposed to just Negro History Week, which I think was either the second or third week in February, when around the time Lincoln and Frederick Douglass were born.
Oh, so for all those years, you're probably talking about a good 50-year span. It was just a week long.
Right.
But did Ebony magazine pick up on it and do
yes. When I was a boy in the 70s, see, I was a bookworm when I was a kid. I was very awkward and unathletic, so I read a whole lot. And not only did you have Ebony Magazine, you also had Ebony Jr. in
That's
those
right.
days for kids back in the late 60s and early 70s. And I read that stuff as if it was like medicine for my soul, basically, because because Ebony would, I would say that I learned a lot of my history as a boy from a combination of Ebony Magazine, and Langston Hughes had a book called Pictorial History of the Negro in America. And a white Jewish fellow named William Loren Katz had a book called Eyewitness, the Negro in American History, that I still have both of those books today. Those books turned me on to what I wasn't getting in the classroom in those days. And they played a major part in my development, as well as the stories of people like my parents who lived through a lot of that history themselves, because my parents were born in 1922. They were old enough to be my grandparents, but still, I learned a lot from them and the other elders around me. There was a lady across the street from us, Miss Martha W. Jenkins, who was my Sunday school teacher. She was a Sunday school student of Adam Clayton Powell Sr. at the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem, and Mary McLeod Bethune was one of her mentors. So I would talk to her for hours about things like that. And this was the kind of thing that was my foundation that made me what I am today.
Yeah. But let's go back to this. Maybe you did give an idea. What did they like when Carter G. Woodson maybe got started? What would he have said about Black History Month?
Well,
We've overcome slavery, everybody, and look at where we are, which is the good that we can come out of this.
It was a combination of that, and he also would stress the importance of what was happening and what happened in Africa prior to that. He wrote extensively on the African kingdoms and empires and so on and so forth.
Really? Okay.
You know, because as I mentioned before, two of his books, one was African Heroes and Heroines. He wrote that, I think, in 1939. And another book he wrote was, as I mentioned earlier, about African folk tales that the griots would pass down over there. And ironically, during my own travels in Africa, I would meet with griots who would tell very similar stories. Okay, and for those of you who are watching this who don't know what I'm talking about, the griots are this tradition that they have in West Africa, where they have these elders who were taught since childhood to memorize the stories of the kings and the queens and the villages and all of that. And to this day in the villages, they gather around these storytellers who are basically the sources of the oral histories. And there's a gentleman over in Gambia, I believe his last name is Cisse, who's doing a good job of chronicling the stories of the griots and pamphlets so the young people could read about this stuff in school, you know, just in case these people pass away on us. So he got a lot of this kind of thing, although I think most of his information about Africa was secondhand from journals by people who went there, and older history books that were written by people who had done research on Africa. But still, they needed to know that, because you see, as Malcolm X would say much later in Los Angeles in 1962, you can't do anything unless you thought you've done something. And most people back then thought Africa was just jungles and ooga booga and people, you know, savagery and all of that. When, let me say this about so-called savagery in Africa. I was in Gambia in May of 2022 when you had the Texas school shooting, right? And they broadcast that on CNN Africa while we were there. So the people, our hosts in Gambia, they could not understand the whole thing with the Texas school shooting, because you see, in Gambia and many of the West African nations, average public citizen is not allowed to have guns, only the military and the police. So we were trying to explain to them about the Second Amendment and the gun culture in America. And they looked at us as if we were trying to explain Chinese trigonometry, right?
Right, I got you.
And so I looked at some of the other Americans and I said, and some of us back home have the nerve to call these people the savages. Man, we're the real savages.
Yeah, there you go.
We're in America. They're more civilized than us.
let me ask you this. So you said that the president made it a month because prior to that, it had gotten a lot of acclaim.
Right,
At this point, a lot of people are talking about it. They're looking forward
right.
to that week, so on and
Hmm.
so forth. And if I would suspect that there's events happening all over America, and then someone says, "Well, okay, let's just make it the whole month long." Was it was a week for about 40, 50 years, and then they said, "Let's make it a month." And it had nothing to do with the white man choosing that month. It was Carter G. Woodson, and I've been to Carter G. Woodson's house in Washington D.C.
Hmm.
It's a historic landmark now.
Right.
Yeah,
But again, you see, part of the work of people like yourself and myself is to deprogram people from all this negativity that they've been taught all their lives. And that's not an easy thing to do. To give you an example of what I mean by that, you try and tell people that the Willie Lynch letter was a fabrication, they'll almost want to fight you.
okay,
And I'm like, why would you even want to believe something as terrible as that? That we were so ignorant that some white man could just make one simple speech and destroy us as a people. I don't want to be that weak. I don't want the idea that my ancestors were that weak, that they were that simple-minded, that one little speech could do something like that. But you see, again, a lot of times people like simple answers to complicated questions. And even though that simple answer is not good for the psyche of our people, this is why we got to do so much work in re-educating our
right.
people.
That's right. Then let me ask you this: as you and everybody, he's an educator, one of the country's foremost uh, institutions, the Senate. Do you find that people only talk about Black history? That the the schools, I know they teach it year round, they have classes, but that they are, most people wait till February to be a part of a Black history experience.
Yes, because again, this has largely been a subject that has been widely known primarily to the few who are adventurous enough to go out and dig up these things and read these things. And unfortunately, that is not yet the majority, because most people, again, they they would rather get their stuff quick and fast off social media or wait till a movie comes out to learn something about it. And I try to explain to people that while movies are entertaining, if you want to be entertained, you go to Hollywood. If you want to be educated, go to the library.
There you
Because
go.
take for the Malcolm X movie, for example. The Malcolm X movie is very entertaining, but in a fictional movie, in a movie, you're going to have it compressed to 2 hours, to
Right.
where you're going to have to leave out a whole lot of things. You're going to have to make up some things to make the story interesting. Like, for example, when I tell people that there was no Baines that was was depicted in the Spike Lee movie, they can't believe it. And I said, Baines was not a real person. He was a composite of John Bembry, who was in prison with Malcolm X, as well as one of Malcolm X's brothers who brought him into the Nation of Islam. I believe it was Reginald Little. And so when you tell them these things, they put so much stock in this stuff that when you tell them the reality, they get what's called cognitive dissonance. It's kind of traumatic that something they put a lot of stock in isn't true.
Right.
See?
That's
But
right.
as historians, we have to do this with the people to get them to understand the truth. But we also have to put the truth, we also have to consider that, as Malcolm once said, you can't take a man who's been in a cave for 400 years in darkness and all of a sudden you shine a light on them. It'll be just like when you get up in the morning and you go to the bathroom. You don't turn on the light in the bathroom and look up at the light after 8 hours of darkness. You
Yeah.
turn your head away from the light before you
Yeah.
lift up that toilet seat and use the bathroom
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
your eyes
Yeah.
can adjust. So we
Right.
have to adjust in getting this stuff out to our people in a way that doesn't push them away.
With that said, as an educator, what's usually the percentage of Black and white in your history classes?
Well, it depends. I mean, the school that I teach now is predominantly white by and large. And it's kind of rare that I get more than 5 or 6 Black students in there, because the tragic truth is that at a place like the Citadel, the majority of the Black students, the Black male students, I should say, are football guys on athletic scholarship and such, and very few from the city in which it is, in Charleston, South Carolina. They're usually from often places like that. So it's relatively few. I do have a sizable number of African students, though, which is quite interesting. And because of my travels to that region, I'm able to relate to them in a way that some of the other professors aren't. But with the white kids I get, it's kind of interesting because the Citadel is a very conservative school by and large. And I have white students who really believe all this stuff about the election being stolen and Trump being framed and all this kind of nonsense. But I just give it to them. I just give it to the facts and all of that. But what I do when I give facts to people, I do my best not to belittle them or make them look ridiculous, because that just turns them away.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because to give an example of what I mean, I had one student when I was talking about Nelson Mandela, he goes, Professor Fordham, wasn't Nelson Mandela a communist? And so I said, well, now, before I answer that question, what is your definition of a communist? And, he started stuttering because I knew he was just repeating what he heard, right? And I said, well, if you go to the library, read the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, which gives you Karl Marx's philosophy on communism. And it's a short book. And when you finish it, we can go ahead and have this discussion.
Right.
So he wound up learning something.
Yeah. Did he read it?
He did. And we talked about it.
Okay.
And I explained to him that what happened with Nelson Mandela was that England and America refused to help him. So he had to get help from somewhere. And so thus it was from people like Fidel Castro and Yasser Arafat and Nikita Khrushchev and folks like that. Well, he was trying to save his people. And so therefore you have to sometimes take gifts from the Greeks. And that's what happened with Nelson Mandela, But again, that requires context and nuance that you have to explain to people. And a lot of people, again, they want everything so quick and easy, that what they want the idea, these are the good guys and these are the bad guys. And they don't understand that sometimes there's shades of gray.
Yeah, no, it's no question. But when we talk about going back to the main theme of, is February enough? Mm-hmm. How do we get, and then now we got Juneteenth.
Right.
That's on the rise, and people are using that as a Black History moment.
Right.
I don't know if they're using Juneteenth as a Black History moment more than a celebration. Maybe they throw in some history there, so on and so forth. But maybe they do throw in some history on the Juneteenth. They do some African kind of connotations. But I don't know if everybody really understands why there's Juneteenth.
Well, again, it's a start. It's a start. You see, you got to start somewhere with the people, and it's better to have something like that than nothing at all. So, we have to take the opportunity of Juneteenth to not only teach them about General Granger and what happened in Galveston, Texas in 1865 and all that, and that can lead to a larger discussion about the fact that our freedom came in stages for a lot of people. It wasn't like Lincoln waved his magic wand and all of a sudden that was the end of slavery. It wasn't that simple. And so this is where we take the time to educate people. But again, with a lot of academics have a problem in which that they don't know how to break things down to the average person outside of academia. And that's a very key thing. And let me give you 2 examples of this.
Right.
For example, I was at one event recently where this person asked questions about slaves, right? And this person was like in their late 50s or so, older gentleman. And the academic, he's all on this, don't say slaves, say enslaved Africans and all this stuff about semantics. You run the people away when you do that kind of thing. You meet the people where they are, and you engage with and you converse with them, and you don't do it like that. And then there was another person at another event who repeated this nonsense that comes off of one of these YouTube charlatans about us being foundational Black Americans and this crazy stuff about how we were indigenous here before the Native Americans and not from Africa and all this junk, right? And I mean, the person on the lectern, I mean, gave the young lady a intellectual beat down from the stage. No, that's not how you do things. You know, you can do these type of things without embarrassing people and turning them away.
Right.
You know, you can just calmly say, well, what is your source on that subject? And the person can tell you where they got that from YouTube or whatever. And you can suggest that there are better sources out there for the person to read some real history as opposed to this charlatanry. And so that way the other person is you are giving them some enlightenment, but yet you are not embarrassing them or pushing them away. Because not only do you embarrass the person, you turn off other people in the audience with your arrogance when you do that.
Right. You know, it's kind of amazing. And I know I'm going to ask you this because you talk about it in front of white kids and students and professors and people of the like.
I talk about it in front of
Black
everybody.
people talk about Black history in front of white people on just a given conversation. We kind of turn around and whisper. I don't like. I'll be honest, man. I ain't comfortable enough for talking about about being Black in front of white people.
Bruh.
To some extent, you know what I mean? Because I just how do you deal with it? So you completely comfortable with it?
Yes, sir.
I mean, they know they know I'm Black. They know you Black. So I mean, that ain't the question.
Okay, here's the thing. I'll tell you what cured me of that kind of stuff. One time in Togo, West Africa, I was with our group eating in the cafeteria at the airport in Togo, right? And this African lady starts just jaw-jacking up against one of the military police, right? I mean, she was showing her gluteus to the maximus, right?
Really?
Just, you know, and I heard a few English curse words as she's screaming to this guy, you know, just showing out. And the guard gets sick of this mess and he leads her away and handcuffs her and arrests her. So I look at this and I look at the people, the fellow Americans I'm eating with, and I said, what do y'all notice about what y'all saw just now? And they were, and you know, it took them a while to get to where I was going. Where I was going with that was that in America, because we are the minority, we are trained to think, oh my goodness, why do they got to do this around white people? Right. Oh, this is so embarrassing.
Exactly.
But in Africa, since we are the majority in Africa, you could see what happened there is just one person acting ignorant regardless of race. And this really does not affect you because the people around you know that that person was representing themselves and their ignorance,
very good
not
point.
us, you see?
Very good point.
Exactly. So I concluded that by saying, see, Nina Simone once said, I wish I knew how it was to be free, right? Well, freedom is when you realize, is when you're in the majority and you realize that a person's foolishness does not really affect you directly and that you don't have to walk around in shame over Sexy Red or what's happening to Puffy and all this other kind of stuff. That's on them, not you. But people have, but however, I understand that people have to grow to that point. And I don't condemn people for where they are, but I do try to help them get to this certain point because I've still got somewhere to go myself. And I depend on elders to help me get to that higher level. So instead of putting a person down for thinking that way, I knew why they think that way. And so I give them room to grow.
Yeah, because, you know, I mean, and we can, and I know we're going all over the place, but we still at the same main thing. And like in corporate America, I think that some people feel there are some Black people that feel it ain't gonna be but a couple jobs at the top. So me doing too much to help somebody else out is going to take these couple jobs. They can't beat 5 black vice presidents, or the bank or whatever. And so I think that's one of the things that we understand as a minority set.
Right. But see, once you've lived and see what it's like to be in the majority, it changes your mindset. And that's the beauty of Africa.
I can't imagine. I got to get to Africa.
Oh, you must.
Yeah, I got to get there. And so February is just one marker.
Right. February is a starting point. Carter G. Woodson designed that as a means to an end. Of course, his intention was to eventually take it beyond that. But you see, you need visionary thinkers for that, because you see, the thing is, the average person, as again, the average person knows what's in front of them. Okay. It's just like a ghetto. The average person will look at a ghetto and say, oh, this is just the hood. Nothing can be done with this. But a visionary will look at the hood and say, look at the potential of where this could go. I could build a mansion here. I could build a skyscraper here. I could build a hotel here, and so forth. So the thing is to get people in that visionary mentality where they can see beyond where they are right now and the possibility of where they could be. So you take the right now of February and take what you learn in that and spread it to these other months and continue to learn constructive things to help build the community's thinking to a higher level.
And one of the things that's happened over the years has been the Afrocentric schools. And what they've tried to do. I know we've had a few of them in Detroit. I think it's kind of crazy, though. There was a heightened moment of the Afrocentric schools. And I got a funny feeling, I could be wrong on this, but if there were 8 of them, maybe only 3 or 4 of them still exist for some reason or another.
Yeah. Well,
And I'm wondering, and when I've done research, looking for Afrocentric schools to promote my book, things of that sort, there are some in various cities, but I don't think it is as grand as it once was.
well, unfortunately, sometimes people view this as a kind of faddish thing, because you'll notice that every few years, Afrocentrism becomes a big thing. And sometimes it flows and it ebbs.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you got to be sort of careful about some of the people who are behind this type of thing, whether they are true visionaries or people who are just there to cash in on a fad and take it and keep going. Because a lot of those things you had in the 60s, for example, and the early 70s and all, when I was young and such, you had some of these people who talk that Afrocentric stuff and promised the people the moon and all that, when in reality, they were just after money and women. And these things shut down after a short period of time because of the corruption of the people who did it. So I say to that whole thing with Afrocentric schools is to just keep your eyes open with things like that, and don't get too caught up in the issue of cultism and thinking that the individuals who are promoting these things are some sort of superior human being than you, and you wind up losing yourself in the midst of a whole lot of corruption. You got to avoid that kind of thing at all costs, and study some yourself and do this with your eyes wide open.
That's going to lead to this question. Black history has been going, let's say, averagely well for a while. But then there was something that happened. I don't know, was it the Trump effect, so on and so forth, that made the other people be where they had to stop teaching it in schools. And the reason why I say that is because I was told this. In Florida, my man DeSantis and the school board spent a ton of money. They sent all, not just some, from what I gather, all of the teachers to some seminars, what have you, sessions to learn Black history so that they could be even more effective and more emotional, or whatever the words to be, for the Black students. And then, and I don't know, I think it even happened under DeSantis' governorship. I could be wrong. And then they turn around and say, okay, now we had enough of that. We don't want them to know any.
Okay, here's the thing with that. It was taken out of AP courses, similar to what for a while happened here in South Carolina until we raised enough cane to where it's back in the honors classes. But here's my take on that. See, right now, I mentioned earlier the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, right? Today, that organization continues as the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. I was the Charleston chapter president from 2000 to 2002. So when DeSantis pulled all that stuff back, those folks got, what people aren't saying in the narrative is that those people in Florida got smart. The Association for African American Study of Life and History, they set up programs in churches, meeting halls, juke joints, community centers and that sort of thing, to teach legitimate Black history to adults and children who want it, so that if DeSantis or everything pulls this stuff out of school, in the words of Billie Holiday, mama may have, papa may have, but God bless the child that's got their own. Right. That way, they took control of the means of production and did it that way. And that's good because, see, it's dangerous to let this kind of thing go to people who don't know what they're doing because, see, there's a lot of, and you know this as well as I do, there are fraudulent out documents, fraudulent YouTube channels, fake historians promoting phony Black history out there that's just making money off the emotions of the people. And some people are going with that who don't know any better and say, this is Black history. You can't have that. That's just going to cause confusion. So you need people who are qualified historians to do that. And fortunately, the Association of the Study of African American Life and History, they're doing what needs to be done in Florida to deal with that. But another thing that can be done too is to have the ACLU sue the state in a class action lawsuit on First Amendment grounds in getting things like that out of the school. So you can fight that battle on both fronts.
That is funny. That's a good lead in almost, because next week, that's what we're going to talk about here on our live broadcast. And the lady who's going to lead the discussion, just as you have done tonight, is a lady by the name of Rhonda Thomas. Okay. She's with an organization called Faith in Florida. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're doing. And has signed up churches and so on and so forth to be a part of that movement to keep it alive. Because one of the things that, and we can always say this has happened throughout our history. Oh yeah, sometimes they beat us down. Let's say, okay, we grant that, in various ways, but they don't beat everybody down. And there are going to be people who are going to step up to meet the challenge.
Exactly.
Like the Faith in Florida group, and like what you just said of the Asala group.
Right.
And so I think what happens is that there was some effort. I don't know, again, it might have been the Trump thing or what have you, that said, we don't want them to learn this Black history. And then I thought it was kind of cute what they did was, and it had made a lot of sense if I looked at it from their perspective. They're going to say, well, okay, it makes us feel bad. And I'm sure it does. There's no question. If I was them, I'd feel bad too.
Wait. I always kill that argument with this. A person who says that shows their own ignorance when it comes to the true history of Black people. Because if you are going to be honest and teach real Black history is not only solely about, oh, look what the white man did to us.
That's right.
But you have to acknowledge the role of the abolitionists, the William Lloyd Garrisons and John Brown during the days of slavery, who risked their lives for Black people. You got to look at what Lincoln did, not only with the Emancipation Proclamation, but April the 11th, 1865, he said in his last speech from the White House that he wanted the newly freed Blacks to vote and go to school, when John Wilkes Booth was in the audience, and that's what encouraged John Wilkes Booth to assassinate him. You got to acknowledge Charles Sumner, who the high school is named after in St. Louis, and Thaddeus Stevens up in Pennsylvania, two white men who fought during Reconstruction to get Black people the right to vote as well as serve in office. You got to acknowledge Judge Julius Waitie's Waring here in Charleston, white judge run out of town in 1952 for trying to get African Americans to desegregate schools. You got to acknowledge your hometown of Detroit, Viola Liuzzo, white lady who got killed down in Selma, Alabama, trying to help Black people to vote. Her daughter Sally and I are very good friends today. You got to acknowledge people like that as part of Black history, of the true allies that helped us in the trenches. So real Black history is not about, quote, making white kids feel bad. It's about telling the truth. Now, to reverse that, if you were talking about making white kids feel bad, in 1978, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, suburb of Charleston, where I grew up, they taught us in the South Carolina history book by Mary Sims Oliphant, quote, that after the war, the Negroes lost their heads and the Ku Klux Klan was formed to bring order back to the South. How do you think that kind of stuff made Black kids feel? But luckily for me, I was a bookworm reading Langston Hughes' pictorial history of the Negro in America. I was also reading William Loren Katz, a white man from New York, Jewish, who wrote Eyewitness, the Negro in American History. And then John Johnson had the Ebony History Encyclopedia. That was my vaccination against the ignorance I was being taught in class.
There you go. And they say they don't want to make them feel bad. So then
Well,
they come up with these,
along.
Yeah, right, with these extreme policies. I mean, some of the books that they're banning, even though some of white people have written those and say, hold on, man, just, what are you talking about?
Well, yeah. Exactly my point.
But the main point of that, and as we almost kind of come to a close, the main point of that is we as Black folks still step up and say, hey, we're going to find a way around what you're trying to do. Let me give you another example, and I know you can chime on this. I really thought the Black Panthers was a militant group.
They were.
But I mean, in the regard that I didn't really know if I had respect for them to some extent until I saw the movie and they were feeding kids for breakfast. I didn't know that. I didn't get that part of it. I thought that Stokely Carmichael might have actually got bad at some white police officers, not him, but Huey Newton and some of the other names, and said, we're going to just go kill some white people. That was kind of the story that they told. And I kind of bought into that until I became a little more astute and said, hold on, I got respect. If somebody was a part of that group, I got more respect for them now that I know the true part of it.
Let me say this about that, okay? Most people have a difficult time with the idea that two things could be true at the same time, and the idea of shades of gray.
Right.
When you deal with the Black Panther movement, you deal with a lot of complications and contradictions. You deal with the good that came out of things like the free breakfast program and all of that. But when you get deep into the study of what was going on, because I met Bobby Seale when I was at University of South Carolina, and we had and this was after he had fallen out with the Panthers, and we had a real deep conversation. And there's a lot to that is too long for me to get into here and now. But you see, with the Panthers, you got to pretty much, just with, say, Elijah Muhammad and a lot of things like that, you got to eat the meat and spit out the bones. In other words, there's a lot of good, but there's a lot of bad with that. And you have to resolve that conflict in your mind about that and understood that, well, you know what? I'll take the good that they did, but acknowledge that they made mistakes that we don't need to repeat.
Yeah. I give you another example of that really got me to be able to be a happier person in this regard. I remember when John Lewis was running for Congress against Julian Bond. I was living in Atlanta at the time, and boy, that got ugly. And I was amazed because I didn't know John Lewis, but I knew of Julian Bond. I had heard my man ran for president. He
met them both. I met them both.
So on and so forth. And I was like, oh my God, man, why y'all getting this ugly for this, for the office? I mean, you a womanizer, we need to take a drug test and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And the thing that really came out of what I heard is not Julian, but John kind of started some of those accusations.
Well, again, again, you simply have to understand that, my mentor was Dean Willie Harford, a black man at the University of South Carolina who taught Black history. And he said that any man or woman above the age of 21 has done things that they would rather other people not know. Heroes are not 100% good.
That's right. That's right.
Villains are not 100% bad.
Right.
We have to get out of this idea of absolutism, thinking that these individuals are perfect, godly beings. They are not. There has not been such a thing. And you have to understand that even though an individual may do a whole lot of good, there might be some bad in there. There's always some bad in their background.
Yeah,
and
right,
even
right.
individuals who we despise may have done some good here and there. People are complex.
Yeah.
And there you have it.
There you have it. And like as we and really I kind of come to the conclusion, we do this for an hour. When we talk about Black history, what would you want people to understand? That there was that bad, but look at the good that has come. Look how we've survived it. Look at how we've look at some of the stories of our survival, of us going to colleges, to the Harvards and the Yales and stuff like that. Not everybody, because they even and I shouldn't go to say they even talk about even now. I was at a boys girls home. They said, "Man, we ain't got no opportunity." And I had to look at the young sister and I said, "What in the hell you?" I didn't say hell, but what are you talking about? We have no opportunity.
Okay, they
You,
grow
you
up
follow me?
around. Okay, I'm gonna make this as quick as possible. They grow up around bitter older people saying things like that, and you just can't have your kids around everybody, especially those who poison their minds with that type of thing. But one of the things I want to get out to Black people is this: everybody hears about the Tulsa massacre, but few hear about the fact that as the Tulsa massacre was happening, Obie Mann and another fellow who was Peg Leg Taylor led World War I Black veterans and armed posses to defend their community while that was happening. They were outnumbered and outgunned. But after that was over, there was a Black lawyer named B.C. Franklin. Their city was about to take the scorched Black land and sell it to whites. B.C. Franklin took that case to the Supreme Court and won. So the Black community, with donations from the NAACP, began to rebuild the Black Wall Street. So much so that when Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, in the Crisis magazine, 1926, he went to Tulsa and he saw that the Black people there built Tulsa back up even better than what they had before 1921. He said, "Black Tulsa, I bow my head to you." So this is now that information can be found in not only B.C. Franklin's autobiography, but B.C. Franklin was the father of the great Black historian, Dr. John Hope Franklin, who I know you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And John Hope Franklin's son, John W. Franklin, he and I were at a conference together and we talked about all that. And he was pretty pleased that I knew that fact.
Yep. Yeah, that's so true.
And this is
I
the thing we got to emphasize.
yeah, that see, there's always everybody. There's two sides to the coin.
Right.
And so when we talk about, well, I don't want to hear about Black history until February. Come on, okay, well, let's talk about some good stuff.
Well, see, that's my point. See, because a lot of people because you got to remember, the young people of the day have parents and grandparents that didn't live through these things, and they don't know these things, and all they know is what little that they've been told. Much of it is inaccurate for the first part. But you see, my thing is, if all you teach about is the tragedy, the people will have no hope to want to do anything better because they will think there's no reason to do anything better. If all you teach about are the triumphs, then the people won't know what to do when the tragedies happen. So that's why you got to have a balance. You got to teach the tragedy so that people will know that, listen, if things get bad, it's the possibility things could get this bad, but you got to know what to do when that happens. You got to teach the triumph because you see, the people cannot live without hope. Without hope, you are among the walking dead. So that's why you got to mix up the triumph along with the tragedy.
There you go. that's gonna close us out, everybody. Is there anyone else on the podcast with us? I don't see anybody else on there. Anybody got any questions or anything like that? Chime in as we come to a close. Um, okay, well maybe not, but we're growing, and I know that there will be more to come. And Brother Damon, you more than welcome. Like I say, if you can, if Mondays is good, come back next Monday with Rhonda Thomas. You gotta meet this sister. She's bad. She's a reverend out of I think she lives in Miami, but the organization I think is based in Orlando, and it's
Well,
called
keep
Faith
me
and
posted,
Flow.
and I'll let you know because
Yeah,
I can't, for various reasons, say exactly when, but in the
yeah,
very near future, I am going back to Africa again. But
yeah, yeah.
just keep me posted, and we'll talk about it. Okay?
Yeah, we'll talk about it because we man, you my guy, man. Ain't no question. I'm coming close to meet you, and we'll talk offline because I got to get to meet this brother and shake his hand. Maybe some of that smarts would just rub off. I've been reading more, but he got, I don't know how many years. We ain't gonna say the age, but he got years in it. And
Look,
so
I'll be 60 years
again,
old in December.
no, that's right. Everybody, this is what we do. Come back next Monday, September 30th. Next Monday, September 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'll have the illustrious Reverend Rhonda Thomas from Faith in Florida talking about what they're doing to fight the efforts to keep the limit of what's taught on Black history. And so I thank you for joining me, Brother Damian Fordham. I'll be in touch with you very soon. Everybody go to businessintheblack.net. Get you a copy of this book because this book is positive Black history. This is stuff that we talk about enslaved Black people who own businesses and who went to college. I give you some negative too. I gotta, like he said, give you a little equal balance where I talk about what they did to hurt us with the freeways running through the cities and the redlining and stuff like that. But that's probably just maybe 15, 20% of what the book's entirety is all about. And so it's the good Black history that you need to know. So again, thank you for coming on with us. Until I see you again, bye-bye, everyone.
Much respect.